Our speaker this evening is an individual who has a very broad experience across board. He's worked across sectors, but mainly he's an economist and a development practitioner. He has worked with Visa, he's worked with EcoBank, he's worked with the UNDP, but I won't say all because I'd like him to share. So if it's okay with you, would like to start to get a better understanding of where you're coming from, your background. How was your childhood like? Were you like us or very different? And how have you grown through to become what you are today?
Thank you very much. First of all, I am very grateful that you chose to spend your early afternoon, evening with us. I don't take it for granted. I am from Côte d'Ivoire, and I left Abidjan in 1998. And I can tell you exact date. It was the 25th of January, 1998. Because like many of us, we have this belief that it is better to leave our countries. And I had the same aspirations of leaving my country, but I didn't go where I thought I would go. But I'll come to that. So my father was a medical doctor, and my mother was a nurse. And I was born in 1978, to be precise, the 8th of December, 1978. And they had just started working. So my entire journey of schooling was in public schools. And I don't know how my mother did it, but she got a scholarship for me to go and study in a French school in Abidjan, which was the best school at the time. So I did those 4 years in this very posh school, coming from a public school. And when the scholarship ended, I went back to public school. So my last 3 years of high school were at Lycée Classique d'Abidjan. And previously, in between that, I was in a public school. And this year, for some reason, I decided I wanted to go back to my primary school. I went to that school and I sat in one of the classrooms that I used to. And I asked myself if that little boy knew where he would be. And the answer was no. The answer was no because all I had when I was growing up was what my teacher was telling me and what my parents was telling me and maybe my uncles and so on. There was no internet. So I could not project myself beyond what I could see in Abidjan. So if you ask me today, in all honesty, did I think that I would be where I am today? The answer is no. Because I just could not imagine something that I didn't know, that I couldn't see. And my first year at university was not where I thought it would be. Because when I finished in 1996, when I had my baccalaureate in 1996, my sister had already gone to France to study. But my parents said that they couldn't afford it. So my first year was at the University of Abidjan. But the University of Abidjan, when I was in the French school in the early 90s, students were protesting about better conditions. And because I was in that school, they stormed the school. And we were all asked to hide under the table. And they locked the door. But I never understood that the violence that I thought was irrational, I'll come to face it as a first-year student in Abidjan, at the University of Abidjan. So what they were fighting for, I could not understand what it was. Because at that time, I was in an environment that was protected, secluded, the best school, private school in Abidjan. But when I stepped foot on the University of Abidjan in 1997, we were 1,400 in the amphitheater. It meant that a group of us had to alternate to get to campus at 4:30 in the morning to make sure that we could have a seat in front. That was our choice. We wanted to be in front so that you could hear, because otherwise you just in an end, and you could not hear, you could not follow. I made very good friends from that experience of coming to alternate. But at the same time, I think my parents realized that it probably was not going to work. And Was I upset that I couldn't do what my sister did? Of course I was. But did I hold it against them? No. They were very honest to the fact that this is something that they couldn't do. And that's a reality. So I finished the first year, and there was a war that broke out in 1996 in Congo, Brazzaville. At the time then, my father had already left Abidjan. He was working in Brazzaville, and the office was relocated to Zimbabwe. So guess where I landed? Harare, Zimbabwe. When I left on the 25th of January 1998, I landed in Zimbabwe. And the idea was for me to improve my English, and I think there was still that idea of going to study in France or maybe Canada or these places. And in June, my father came home one evening and he handed me an envelope. White envelope, opened it, University of Cape Town, never heard about it. It was not on my radar, really. I applied, and then at that time I had to decide if I was going to take the risk of waiting. So we were already in 98. I finished high school in 96. I still haven't started university. 2 years after. So in June, if I wait for the decision for University of Cape Town, which comes in December, I still haven't gone to university yet. The decision comes in December, and I am accepted to study finance at University of Cape Town. And I leave Zimbabwe in February 1999, and I moved to South Africa. Never been again, except for a transit from Abidjan to go to Harare. So from 1998, when I leave Abidjan, I've not lived in Abidjan since then. I just followed the opportunities that came my way. Sometimes just by following the instinct, just going for it without not being sure what it would be. But I think if I have to think of my life up to arriving at University of Cape Town, it was very much shielded by what my parents wanted it to be. And my mother's dream was for me to become a banker. That was the definition of success. And you can imagine that there was probably an uncle and a cousin that were bankers. Therefore, that would have been success. But I failed Finance 1 3 times.
3 times?
Yes. So Finance 1, first semester, failed it. I then decided to do the SAP exam in January, failed it. Took Finance 1 again, failed it. And at this point, I remember calling my father, and I said to him, I failed this course. Now, I'm not too sure what to do. And his answer was, you don't want to continue because you can't do it or because you failed. That was it. So that was 2000, end of 2000. So at this point, I had to now decide, what do I do to graduate? Because clearly this guy is not going to provide any guidance onto where I should be going. So I go and meet one of my professors, and I said to him, okay, here's my situation. He looks at my grades, he looks at the classes I've taken. He said, okay, for you to graduate next year, you're going to move to do politics, philosophy, and economics from finance. And that was probably the best decision, because that's what I enjoyed the most. Understanding how things fit together. But it took me failing finance, which was my mother's dream of becoming a banker, to accepting that actually, you know what, it's not my thing. And then starting doing this, graduated 2002, and then the ego kicks in. I do a degree in financial analysis and portfolio management because, you know what, why should I leave this place having failed finance? But there's something that happens in 2001 that I think sort of creates what you see today. My father was killed. And at that moment, I said to myself, I will continue what he started. I didn't know what it meant, but I was determined to continue. So sometimes you find yourself in situations where you have to take responsibility for the seed that was planted in you. And that's what I decided to do. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, but I decided that this was going to be my legacy for him.
I am stunned, but thank you for sharing that. Two things I pick up here: definitely taking responsibility for the seed that was planted in you. And that knowledge came to you very early on in life, probably just a little older than most of us sitting in here. So it's something that we are there. It's time to take responsibility for the seed that has been sown in us. But I did like what your dad said. So is it that you don't want to continue university because you can't do it, or you failed? That's a really critical question that he asked. And I think for all of us here who will experience failure, in fact, all of us will experience failure, it's something that we need to ask ourselves. Are we quitting only because we failed, or because we can't do it? As you grew, what kind of values did you live by? How did you even come by those values? And how have they been challenged?
So integrity, which is what our conversation is about. He was killed for what he believed in. So to me, it's a very, very deeply rooted thing, because I lost someone that was very close to me. The second one is something that I learned from my mother, which is about the discipline of doing things even when you don't want to do them. So my mother's way of making me do this was for me to bake with her, which, I had my sister, but I was the one that was supposed to bake with her. And what I learned through that experience of baking with her is to understand measurements, to understand the right pressure of the right, when you're stirring or when you're beating. These are things that may look obvious, but she had this very interesting way of making sure that she'll come and pick up from where she realized that, okay, this guy's hand is tired, or he's not doing properly, it's taking too much time. So there was always that element of her helping me and guiding me to get to a certain place. And then, of course, from the siblings, where you learn to share willingly or unwillingly. That's a reality. You also learn to accept that one of them is better than you. But it's a safe environment to learn that you are not perfect. And sometimes we feel that we have to be the best in everything. I am not the best in everything, and I don't intend to be the best in everything. I intend to be someone that has sufficient knowledge about different things and a way to learn if I don't know. And I'm respecting the fact that being raised in a family where saving lives was a key part of who we were. So in the 80s, the big conversation was around HIV/AIDS. And my parents being in the medical field, we had to wait most of the times between 12 and 2, because at that time you leave school at 12, go home, have lunch, you take a nap, and then come back. Because there was always some patients that needed help. So of course, when it became time to wonder if I wanted to become a doctor, of course not, because my experience of this is this: you never have time for anything. But what it taught me as well, you need to put people that need help first. So when you look at the thread in my career, it has been about finding myself in places where I'm helping others. I was in a bank, which was my mother's dream, but I came through the back door, the foundation. Then I went on to work at Visa, which is two large financial institutions. but I don't see myself as a banker. I understand banking, I understand payment, but it's not who I am. And that to me are correlated to the values that have been sort of following me all along, that, from my father, question of integrity. And integrity has a price. You cannot possibly think that it is not costly to live with integrity. To accept that you are not the best person in the room also has a price, because it means that you need to know yourself and understand who you are as an individual and see the value in the other person that is better than you. And this should drive you to become a better person, not to kill the potential that they have because they are better than you. So, of course, in real life, this is complicated to always apply. But it means that there are moments where you need to know that you need to leave, because you may not be able to do the things that you do in a way that you can still go and look at your children. I have two. And be comfortable that between what you say to them and what you do, there's an inconsistency. Because children pick up on what you do, not on what you say. You can say you are the most person with the most integrity, fine. But they'll see if really these two connect. And they are wonderful guides in making you understand that actually it's not the case.
A lot I'm picking up here. Your values, integrity, discipline. But it's interesting that even though you've taken a different path from your parents, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. You're still helping people. You still have integrity at the background, at the back of your mind. And it's also interesting that you mentioned that you do acknowledge that you are not perfect. And that does not really bother you. Somebody is better than you. But can I ask, does that mean you are not competitive?
No. I am very competitive. You can ask my children when I make sure that I beat them when we play games. No. But being competitive is not about crushing the other person.
Right.
Being competitive, it's about giving the best of yourself to achieve that objective. I don't believe in crushing anybody along the way. I don't believe in anybody leaving blood along the way. No. Because when you are given those gifts, and that's how I see them, whatever I have as a Christian, those are gifts. And I have to use this gift for the purpose that I have on this earth. So my children have to see that this individual that is talking about faith and religion is consistent. The rest is okay. But if I'm bringing up two individuals, I have to train them to understand their role in society. And it means that they have to see it in my behavior. So I'll give you an example. On the 8th of September, I'm in the office. My boss sends me a message, can we talk about your last mission in DRC? Okay, so I send the team's meeting. Halfway through the conversation, HR walks into the room. My role has been terminated. That was 2 months ago. But it's okay. These 4 years and a half there, in the 21-year journey, it's okay. The only thing I said to them was, it's logistics for my children because the school year just started. But the rest, it's okay. Came home, spoke to my wife, and then we waited for the weekend. So on the weekend, when we spoke to the children, our emphasis was decisions that you do not control must not affect the trajectory of your life. I don't control a company's decision. Somebody looked at it, decided that they want something else. It's okay. But what I want my children to remember is that the day my father came home and lost his job, we understood that certain things will remain stable. Other things may move, but our whole world does not collapse. And this is important because you need to get to a place in your life where you understand that you are part of something which is larger. Your services are required for a period of time. And when they're no longer required, there's no hard feelings. But for you to be able to get to that place, you need two things: physical fitness and mental fitness. You cannot possibly take that hit if you have not spent time working on yourself to be mentally fit and physically fit. Was it a shock? Yes, it was a shock. But what is this shock compared to losing my father? So life trained me differently. I did not expect it. It happened. Same when I was 2001, so I was 22. Did I expect it? No, it happened. Yes, it hit me. But there's no harder shock than losing your father or losing your mother or losing somebody who's dear to you. So losing a job is an event. As much as it can be painful and shocking, it's an event. Life will continue, but you go back to what you hold dear, which are your values. Is it necessary for me to go now and engage and negotiate something? No. A decision that has been made, I do not control this decision. What do I control? I control my emotions. I control my reaction. I control how I'm going to deal with this situation. And that to me was a perfect way of teaching my children the power of being able to manage your emotions and respond to a situation. So you may encounter this along the way. Losing a job or losing somebody or whatever it is there. But you need to ask yourself a question. Am I mentally and physically fit to absorb the shock? If you're not, you need to ask yourself a question. What do I start doing today to be ready for that?
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to come to you in a minute. So have your questions ready. But just to ask you, are you gaining any value from this? Any things you're learning? Anything that you can apply to your life? Yes. And one really interesting thing that I think we talk about with students all the time when we have conversations are how you hear about all the really great things happening to everybody on LinkedIn, right? And these are the stories you don't hear, that there are breaks in that journey, but it doesn't, it doesn't define you. It's a bigger picture. In fact, it helps you. It helps to mold you. So it's all extremely important. Let's look at some of the places you've worked in, the work environment. So you've done EcoBank, the UN, Visa. Some of these are profits and for profits. Others are not for profits. Can you give us an instances, maybe however you would choose to, where your values kind of differed from the goals of the organization, or even if it's beyond the goals of the organizations? You've worked with you've worked with various stakeholders. Times when those values that you hold dear to you were challenged. How did you maneuver those without saying, hey, because of this, I am quitting?
So it was October 2012. I just finished grad school, came back to Geneva where I was living, and I was responsible for Benin, among other countries, at the Global Fund. So I go for my first mission in the country with my manager and other colleagues and so on. The day we land on a Sunday, we get told that the president wants to see us because the team was coming to assess the renewal of all the grants in the country. And then 2 days in, my manager has to go, other colleagues have to go, so it's just me. And I have a meeting with the technical partners. So technical partners are usually people that provide funding either to the country directly or to the global fund where I used to be. And I go into this meeting on my own with all these technical partners who in the meeting remind me that they are big funders of the global fund. In other words, they pay for my salary. And we have a disagreement about how we should approach some of the work that should be done in Benin. I leave that room really frustrated, annoyed, and emotionally charged. I don't sleep very well that night. I wake up in the morning around 5 and I write an email. And I press send. 10 o'clock, they respond. Every single ambassador of the people I was meeting is copied, including the board of the Global Fund. My phone rings, it's my boss. What have you done? Blah, 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 and all this stuff. I disagreed with what they wanted to do. I didn't have the authority to disagree with them. But as an African, I was really, really shaken. And I was not able to control my emotions that were literally all over that email. And it almost cost me my role. I was saved on the technicality. The probation period that ended, they had not notified me, therefore it means that I'm no longer on probation. For 6 months, I don't have anything to do. So I come to the office every single day, no email, nothing. But I understand what has happened, and I understand what the company or the organization believe that is right to do. I am so very much furious about what happened because, I felt that probably I didn't get the right support. I just returned to the organization. There are some legacy issues, but it doesn't matter. I make that decision to send the email, and the consequences are what they are. So during those 6 months, I do what I have to do, which is showing up every day, but I don't have anything to do. Eventually, they decide to move me to a different team, new manager, and they gave me Guinea-Bissau. No disbursement for past 2 years, really. Nothing exciting about that portfolio. The day I meet my new manager, I tell her I'm leaving in 1 year. She looks at me saying, where are you going? I say, no, I'm telling you that in 1 year I'll leave. Because at that point, I understood that there was nothing left for me here. Because there was some elements that just didn't go with what I believe was the right thing. Guinea-Bissau, I go to the country and I meet the local partners, so majority people from Guinea-Bissau. And then there's this gentleman, very respectable man, that was a Minister of Education, Minister of Foreign Affairs, that says to me, I've been accused of having stolen money. I haven't. I said, well, I'm not aware, but I'll look into it and then we'll see. Go back to Geneva, start to look at the file, and I take the file, send it to the Office of Inspector General, say, well, there's this situation, can you please assess and let me know if this report that was used to ban the country and stop disbursement can be really used against them. Feedback comes back. Actually, the evidence in this report is a little bit light. It's okay. What I also noticed about Guinea-Bissau is that every 3 months, they were sending their reports. But because we work in a performance-based funding model, they have to be paid for those reports because we used the data in our annual reports. So I start to make the internal case to reimburse the country. Takes a while. Eventually, case is heard, they accept, we reimburse them. The gentleman who was accused of having stolen money actually had not stolen anything. Now, if what happened to me in Benin did not happen, I would not have been moved necessarily to this portfolio. I would not have met this man that found himself in that situation where nobody was willing to listen to him. This man, a year later, was appointed commissioner at ECOWAS.
Wow.
So when he left the office of the president of Cote d'Ivoire, he called me. I didn't know that it was me. So I picked up the phone. He says, "Carl, I've just been appointed as commissioner for ECOWAS, and I want to thank you. I was just doing my job. But a series of events that happened to me turned out that I found myself in a position when I was able to help somebody and for him to be able to continue his career. And to me, this is a gift. To be able to be in a position where you can help someone to achieve their potential is a gift. I didn't ask for anything from him. I did what I felt was right based on the evidence that I had. But it took a misfortune for me to be in a position where I can be of assistance. That was 2012. 2015, the government of Benin decided that they were going to decorate me because they understood what I was trying to do. And that was the way of rewarding me. I didn't ask for it. And you should not do things because you believe that you should get something in return. You should do them because you have the ability, the possibility, and the resources to do it in that time. Whatever happens after is irrelevant. I started my career in Geneva because a colleague of my father that I never met decided that he was going to give me an internship. And you remember what I told you at the beginning, that I wanted to start and to continue what he started. My father was working for the World Health Organization. I started my career at the headquarters, where he never met. So these things, they're not necessarily by design. But if you continue to send positive vibes into the world will respond accordingly. And things that you look at as being so complicated, so difficult, so tenuous, fast forward, you look at them and you say, you know what a wonderful life I had.
Amazing. Benin, where you got into trouble, in quotes, actually awarded you some years later. And the good your dad had done years ago, probably being a person of integrity, came back to you as a son with an opportunity to work in that organization. Thank you for sharing that. Really, really deep ones. Over to you now. I believe you should have some questions. So do raise up your hands. We'll take at least 2 or 3 questions at the same time. I see a hand on the right here. If you can help me with a microphone. We'll take 2, 3 questions at the same time so that we can.
First of all, good evening. I'm Carl Manlan. I'm spent in the class I was 25. And my question to you is something that just came out to me during the course of hearing you speak. So yesterday, actually, we had a program with our higher services. Well, we're exploring a new program that's basically meant to help us network better and help us progress in our careers as students. And one interesting fact we learned during that meeting was that about 80% of jobs today actually aren't necessarily advertised, but come about through networking opportunities. The people you meet, the people you interact with, are most likely people to help you land a job that you wish to get. The question I have for you is, what in the face of this larger job market, the economic realities we face as people, as students who are about to go into the world, and the challenges we know that could come about if we don't on the right job, do you have any advice on how to maintain our integrity as we go through these networking opportunities, as we try to interact with the people whom we very well go to keep to our life?
You want to go one by one or?
I'll take a couple more so that we do all. There was one. So the first one I saw was actually the gentleman at the back there. Can you raise up your hand again? Yes. I don't want to lose you. Yes.
All right. Good evening. My name is Kofi, class of 37. And honestly, I love your stories and I love how it's not just you telling us, but you can see the integrity and hard work laced with your journey. And like, let's go back to campaign. I can't get the image out of my head of you saying going back to your primary school and sitting there and thinking back and how you couldn't imagine me where you are now. Because this is my question. Throughout life, everything I've encountered, everywhere I go, they always say, set out your vision, map your path, and start walking. There's this analogy I heard from my dad where he was saying sometimes he does laps, but it's so far ahead you cannot imagine yourself finishing it. So you put your head down and put one foot in front of the other. By the time you notice you're there, the pain is still there, but by the time you notice you're out. So how do you balance one foot in front of the other versus I set a vision and I start walking? Thank you.
Great question. I'll take the last one. Let's come to this side, but we'll come there again. Let's do the front here. Yeah. We'll come back with the next batch of questions. So don't forget your questions.
Greetings, my name is Faran. Yeah. I grew up hearing this phrase that when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty.
Wait. Hey, I'm over. Slow. Yeah, go ahead.
I say that I grew up hearing this phrase that when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. And in our world today, I'm very passionate about bringing up a change. Yeah, and especially in my homeland. But I notice that the people in which sit in power are mainly, I would say, because they are benefiting from the problem, they really don't care about the people. And as we grow up here in Ashesi, we are being taught of ethics, we are being raised in integrity. How then do I go out there to make a change without actually, like I said, when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty?
Great question. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, about being in an environment where you've got them. So, okay, fantastic. Yes.
So I'll start with you, Farhan. I never heard this quote, but great one. We are very good at judging people. For example, our government is corrupt. And we are very happy to give examples of that corruption. Nobody in this room has worked in government. No one. Maybe maybe the master student, but no one in this room has worked in government. Some of you, your parents may be working in government. Do you consider your parents to be corrupt? So who are these people in government that are corrupted? So the point I'm trying to make to you is the principle that I live with. If I don't have an alternative, I don't criticize. I've never worked in government. Being in government, and I studied public administration, being in government is a very difficult task. I was living in Ghana in 2016 when President Akufo-Addo was elected. Every single day to go to work, I only used taxis. We only had one car for my wife and the kids. Every single taxi driver that I'll speak to was telling me the reason why President Mahama must go. All of them. And they can elaborate it very well. They'll tell you the price of rise the price of oil, of petrol. They'll give you all these reasons. 8 years later, President Mahama is re-elected. It is not an easy task to lead a country. Let me give you one statistic. Every 30 years, African countries' population doubles. Right? Rwanda was there were 7 million people in 1994. There are 14 million today. If you take Ghana, you probably find the same. How do you manage a country when one generation you have the double amount of mouth to feed, to put in school, to take care of their health, to create employment for them? I'm not saying that it's not there. There are probably some elements of it. But we have to acknowledge that not everything that is happening is corrupt. And ask ourselves a question as to why every single day we only speak about the corruption and nothing about some of the good things that the government does. It's a choice. Whoever decides to do this, I don't know, but it's a choice. If everything was corrupt, maybe this institution would not exist. So I understand the urgency. I understand the need to make change. But the starting point of change, if I have to look at my own life, was making sure that I change myself to understand that the intention of those that we point fingers at is not always bad. And if everyone that graduates from the best schools, best university, is in the private sector, who's going to write those policies to make your life better? And I say this cognizant of the fact that I've never worked in Côte d'Ivoire. And I spent my career outside of it. So when I look at the country, I'm very, very hesitant to criticize something that I don't know how it runs. I can speak about the international organization where I've been. I can speak about the private sector that I've been. But I will not venture to criticize something that I don't know how it's run. I studied it, but I never did it. So the injustice that you're talking about and the question of resistance and the duty, my invitation to you is that this duty is to do what you can with what you have to help yourself and your community. I gave you example to some people I was speaking before. So last night I was coming back from dinner with a friend, and there's a man that swept the road, and he had all these dead leaves that were there. He did his job, but there's no system to collect dead leaves. So what does he do? You've seen it. You keep on smelling burnt stuff in Accra. Why? Because he burned them. Because in his mind, if he leaves them, tomorrow morning he has to come and sweep again. Okay, so this small problem has environmental and health consequences. But nobody is thinking that this is a problem to address. For this man, what is injustice for him? The fact that he has swept the road. He has done his duty. But there's nobody to continue what he has started. So I think we have to be very, very careful of deciding that someone is corrupt, a government is corrupt. It's an easy way out because there are strong individuals that are trying to do things there. Corruption exists everywhere. But we have to make sure that when we are in a position to denounce it or to make it better, we do our part. And that to me is a duty. Injustice, I've encountered many along the way. But this did not make me bitter. It made me understand that I have to do what I can with what I have. So when people speak about the Africa we want, I look at them and say, guys, what about the Africa we have? What are we doing with it? So that energy and that fire that is in you, You have to use it by controlling it and understanding the injustice without responding to the injustice necessarily, but trying your best way for that injustice to stop. Kofi, I didn't know what was going to happen to me in September. But for some reason, when I went to Abidjan this year, I always walk around the city because I always navigate by foot. I can do it easily because nobody really knows me in Abidjan. So, most people don't walk, but I can walk because. But I felt that I had to go into the school. Because sometimes we don't press pause on that busy life that we have to really take stock of the fact that we were extremely blessed to get to where we are. The fact that you are here today at Ashesi, maybe you imagined it, maybe you didn't. But being in that classroom, the person who took the picture was there for studying exams to go and work in the administration of Côte d'Ivoire. And then when I told him that I was in this classroom, he was very surprised. For whatever reason, I didn't ask him. I just went to take a picture. But it was important for me to press pause and understand the journey that I've gone through, so that when somebody asks me, how far have you gone? I can respond to them that I'm not there yet. I sent the picture to my daughter. She responded to me, oh, it looks like the school in Sri Lanka. Because she had just gone on a school trip with a class to Sri Lanka. And I asked her, what about your school at the moment? She didn't respond. But what this told me is that the years when I went to school, all the primary schools around the world had the same model, funded by the World Bank probably, one architect, same, tin roof, and then holes, everywhere you go, it's same. So she looks at this picture taken in Abidjan from when I was growing up. In her mind, this is Sri Lanka. So I think you have, this thing about the vision and the path and all this thing, I don't have one. It's maybe I should have one, but I don't have one. Not because I don't want to do the exercise, but my career has been a succession of opportunities that have come my way based on the people, and I'll come to Kwabena's question, based on the people that I encountered along the way. When I was doing my internship at WHO, the head of the department was one of the people that created the Global Fund. He put me in touch with the chief operating officer. Then I moved to the Global Fund a month later. I had 1 month where I was looking for work in Geneva. Then I moved to the Global Fund. At the Global Fund, if you look at LinkedIn, you will see a block of 3 years. These were 23 short-term contracts. So I tell people that a contract is at least 2 parties. And at any given point in time, one of the parties can decide to terminate the contract. This is what happened to me on the 8th of September. So navigating the world in terms of maintaining your integrity should not be your question, because you have to be in that state all the time. What you have to do is to make sure that the consistency of your delivery ensures that people understand that you are somebody who has values and will deliver on the work. That's all that matters. Not an opportunity has come to me in a way that I had to do things that were not in line with my values. As I told you, when I was in Geneva, I said to myself, I need to get out of here. Because of what I experienced, it didn't sit well with me. But I had to figure out. And how did I get out? On the last day of application for the Mo Ibrahim Foundation Fellowship, which I'd never heard about, one of my colleagues in the legal team comes with me with a newspaper and says, I think you should apply for this. It was on the last day. I pick up my phone and I call people that I worked with. And I said to them, I am stuck. I have to submit this application with references, 3 references. I know I'm late, but I really need your help with this. I submitted at midnight, Addis Ababa time. Then I forgot about it. Then in February, I got the news that I was accepted. And that was exactly more or less a year after I told my boss that I was leaving. Did I plan for it? No. But I manifested the fact that I wanted to get out of here. So I have been fortunate enough to look at these moments of transitions as opportunities to do something else. When I woke up on the 9th of September, I worked on my book because I had something else to do. So I didn't have time to now sit on this decision, cry, be sad. No, I don't control that decision. You don't control the people that you meet. What you control is what you tell them and what they sense. Remember I told you, you can talk about values all day, all night. Your energy, your body language, everything about you must reflect those values. Because inconsistency means that you don't have enough memory space to remember all the different things that you did or didn't do. You don't have it. But the consistency allows you to make sure that you are always in a space where you can network without diminishing your values. And you have to learn to be patient. When you sign 23 short-term contracts over a period of 3 years, not knowing when the next one is going to come, was I worried? No. Because I was doing what I was supposed to do. But if I had not told you today, you would never know that I started my career by signing 23 different short-term contracts. But who cares today? So the fallacy that you're going to have a contract with no end date, it just doesn't make sense. But people want it because it offers a sense of security, a sense of stability. But is it really stability and security? So trust yourself and really be kind to yourself, because that's also important. You have to be kind to yourself.
Carl, before you answer the next question, just let me say something here about your 23 short-term contracts and how it actually applies in our lives here at Ashesi. We a lot of times see students who would reject opportunities because that company is not a big name. They don't know that company. Or they will quit their internship with that small company, with that small business, because a big name has called them, and they would literally quit in the middle of an agreement or an agreement with a smaller organization to move to the bigger one, which we find mind-boggling. But look where your journey of short-term, seemingly ungreat or not grand contracts have led you to.
So I guess everybody knows Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and all these big names. Where did they start? So what's in the garage? It means it's a small business, right? So back then when they were started, let's say you were offered an internship, unpaid internship with AWS or Microsoft, you probably would have said no because nobody knew them. So when you start your career, you want to acquire as many skills as possible. And the faster you acquire them, the better it is. It's the same concept as compound interest. So in my case, I was in a foreign country. So it means that the day they say this short-term contract is over, I'm gone. Not to pack up and go. But I wasn't worried because I was doing the work. I was putting the extra hours. And my values did not change. I never went in front of anybody to beg for a long contract. I don't have time for that. My focus was on doing the work. Because every role that I've had, I consider this to be on a bus. Either I know the stop and I get off, or this time around they told me, hey, my friend, get off the bus. So if you look at your life as being on a bus and figuring out where's your stop, then it doesn't matter if it's just one stop, or 2 stop, or 5 stop, or whatever it is. Because you're playing a long game. And you're not competing with anybody. When I started university, all my friends had finished. They all had a bachelor. I was starting. 1999, February 1999, they were finishing in May. I was just starting.
So, our first person who asked a question talked about this life now where you need to network better. And the fact that about 80% of the jobs are, not really what you see online. And the fact that people hold your future in their hands. I want to tie it into something you said a while ago about relationships, that relationships are either transactional or transformational.
Mhm.
If you can explain that better,
Sure.
that would be great.
So, why do you think I'm sitting here? Anybody want to answer? Yeah. Somebody knows me and invited me. Why did they think that they should invite me? They've heard of me. What else? He knows what I represent. Sorry? I like to help people. Okay. All these are right. So this is an example of a relationship that is nurtured. So when I met Dean Abdul, we were working together on African Development University in Niger. And we met in very difficult circumstances where the values that Ashesi believes in were being questioned by the partnership that they got into. The implication and the outcome of this was severe for something that Ashesi has built over the years. What he saw in me and what I saw in him made us believe that we could continue to be friends, colleagues for the long term. So that was one example of a relationship where we were brought into very difficult circumstances, but the quality of the relationship and the values got better because we figured out how to work out of this situation and protect the integrity of the institution. Transactional relationships are the ones where you meet the person, they need something, you give it to them, you help them, and that's it. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't need to have connections everywhere. But you need to make sure that when somebody is in a room somewhere and they mention your name, they can reference how valuable that transaction was, and that's it. There's nothing in this world now, the way we are connected, that you do that is not going to be visible somewhere else. I left the employer. My life goes on. I don't need to be talking badly about them. It's not necessary. They invested in me. I invested in them. It was a transaction for 4 years and 7 months. Done. They paid me for my services. They no longer require the services. I move. That's a transaction. So thinking of a role in the company, unless it's your father or mother's company, then you can say, you know what? I'm safe. Even there, not so sure. Because parents may disappear, the will doesn't exist, there's a bully in the family, they just take everything and then you just get out. So let alone a company that you don't own, an organization that you don't own. Even if you are there for 3 days, make sure that those 3 days, they are so proud of you that they have to start asking themselves, why aren't we keeping that person? There's no such thing as a bad experience. Even if you think that it's not at your level because you are graduate from HSC and it has to be this one from other universities because you're up there. The only thing that your degree tells the rest of the world, the signal that is sent, is that you went through a competitive process and we trust this institution because the people that come out of there behave this way, know certain things. But the value of your degree will start to go down if more of you start to behave in a way that is no longer consistent with what people expect coming out of HSC. So the value of your degree is in your own hands. There are big names out there in terms of universities. It's because the alumni network, some don't, but most maintain that level that is expected. So relationships, when I say transactional, I don't mean that you have to do things in a bizarre way. I mean, you have to deliver at the same quality that you would in a long transaction.
Thank you for explaining that. Initially, I thought transactional was more of, don't go transactional, always do transformational. But this is a really eye-opening explanation. Thank you for that. I'm back to you. There were a few more hands. I will start from the back there. Daniel, please give the microphone to Daniel, and then I will come to this lady here and here. So it's question time. So just have your questions. I will. Yep.
My name is Daniel Opomang Ponsa. I'm part of Team 7 studying growing public policy. And I have a question. So I think I really appreciate everything that Unki paid, the personal stories and the values that you have taught us core. But another one thing I heard is that you said it was a formative process of getting to this point where your convictions are strong to be able to do some of the decisions that you took. I wanted to ask, was there ever an instance where you compromised on your values growing up, and how are you able to balance back and restore? Because a lot of people give the impression that they've had that integrity since they were born, but when you're surrounded by compromise, there may be tendencies of you slipping up but coming back, and I think that's something that's my encourage a lot of people here.
Thanks for that. We'll take, come this way. Please raise your hand up so we can see you. Yes.
Thank you very much for your insights. My name is Dina Carl 2020 and I major in computer finance. So when you were speaking, you mentioned that we should accept that there are other people who are better than us. But sometimes as individuals, when we get to be people's success stories, like Selassie said, when you go to LinkedIn and then you read someone's story, especially when the person is, like, let's say, in your own category, then you tend to, like, let's say, doubt yourself. So my question is, how do you genuinely stay happy with people's successes while not doubting your own abilities?
Great. And last one in front here. Yes.
Bonsoir. My name is Mamita Leslan. I'm doing computer science, and I wanted to relate one of the points Luke's kick off, which is the integrity one, and how the relationship with being abused carry, which is you talk about the institution I'm from, which is African Impact University in Niger. That was the university I studied from before coming here at HSC, which is they kind of tried in the same way, in the same route when everything started. But of course, because of this situation we are in front of, things took another route. I want to have your personal opinion about how much a situation can affect us. Like, I do have my own view, but I want to hear it from someone else's perspective. And my second quote or questions will be related to the when we say being physically fit and emotionally fit. Okay, mentally fit and emotionally fit. As let's say, as a woman, I do most of the time overreact sometimes. And the better way for me to kind of liberate myself and feel like I'm okay with my emotion is by crying, which I feel like is the best way for me to release my stress. How can I when I'm exposed out there to all these different events that are coming my way that I can't control, how can I do that mentally shield and that physical shield that can protect me and make myself really stood out there and be myself and project my values to others?
Okay. Maybe I'll start with Daniel this time. So when I was a student at the University of Abidjan, there were the past exam papers that were circulating. And my mother decided I was not going to go on campus. I was really upset. And my father had been a professor at university. So that night when he came, we had a very long conversation. And there was a belt in between about understanding that it's not because everybody else is doing it that I have to do it. That was one. The second one was, I was younger. I had a tutor that would come home and help me for my exercise. And that day I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do any of the homework and I'll cheat. So I had basically all the answers on my side. I was very naive, picked it up, told my parents, and I got a hiding that I will never forget. So, yes, there was an element of violence that was involved. But was these two situations, I remember I was doing something when I was in primary school, then again at university. What this taught me was that values are non-negotiable and shortcuts are not allowed. So when I got to university and I failed finance 3 times, I didn't look for shortcuts. I accepted that, you know what, this is not for you. You just have to find another way to get there. Because the things about shortcuts, you don't know where it leads you. It may look great. You got there first. And then what? As I started working, situation where I felt that my values would be compromised, I walked away from them. I didn't sign and was happy to do so. Sometimes at the risk of my own position. Because in any case, it's called the slippery slope. If you do it once, then next time you don't do it, they say, well, what happened to you? But you already did it. So if you did it once, what stopped you from doing it again? So to me, I just don't do it once. Because I understand the consequences of doing it once. It's not always easy. And I think I've been fortunate enough to look at situations, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this. Dina. Where's Dina? Yeah. So Gina, sorry. In terms of doubting what people put on social media, I think you should erase this from your life. Because social media is a projection of what maybe people's aspirations are. And this sort of environment and ecosystem where we only want to see the positive stories. So if you had looked at my LinkedIn profile, you will say, okay, this guy, everything is perfect. But you didn't know that I had at 22 faced the reality of losing a father. Then fast forward 14 years later, my mother's dream of me becoming a banker, she dies a week before I go for my interview at EcoBank. So these things, you can't recreate them. But you can't doubt yourself based on things that are not coming from inside. If a doubt is coming from inside, then you can work on it. But if you're looking at somebody's profile on social media and you start to doubt yourself and say to yourself, you know what, I am not there yet. Well, then I wouldn't be here. When my friends that I went to high school with had the bachelor, I did not even start. So of course I was doubting myself. Would I ever make it? I don't have a degree yet. They started working. And here I am starting. Did I feel shame? Of course I feel ashamed. I felt ashamed at the time. But I think you have to being happy for other people helps you to think about what you can become as well. I mean, happiness is not in other people's life only. But you have to find those small things that also make you happy. And there must be some of them. And I can understand. Sometimes also I look on LinkedIn and I say, oh, this guy is 34 and now he's the mayor of New York. I mean, I'm 47 and I'm nowhere near becoming mayor of anything. But that is his trajectory. And that's the opportunity that has been afforded to him. So if I were to ask you, what is your dream of what you want to become? Yes, or what you want to become. You want to be successful, you want to help people. So being successful is an interesting concept because it's a two-way. Either you decide that you are successful or you wait for external validation. So what kind of success are we talking about here? Your definition or external validation? Sorry? Your validation. So stick to that. Just stick to your definition of success. Because you can never understand other people's circumstances and how they got to where they got to. There are people probably looking at you to saying things to themselves, how do I get to Ashesi? Gina is there, she doesn't deserve it. When we were in high school, her marks were terrible. How did she make it there? No, I'm sure they were not. But there are probably people thinking like that. But it doesn't matter. If you're going to spend your time thinking about what other people are thinking about you, you never get anywhere. So, doubt is a very powerful tool. There are moments where I doubt myself. And in those moments, I go back to the basics. And those basics are what? Where is that doubt coming from? Is it something that I cannot do? Is there an opportunity for me to go and learn so that this sort of goes away? But doubt can be used as a very powerful force. It's not necessarily bad. Ramatule. Alors, as a former student of ADU, nobody's going to go back and say, ooh, this guy was at University of Abidjan. He failed or he didn't really finish there and then he went to UCT. No, it doesn't matter. What happened at ADU was resolved. You found a path. You are here. You had wished probably you finished in your own university, in your own country. Yeah, maybe I wished the same back then, but it didn't happen. And I went to UCT, which, I found out that actually is a much better university. But what is powerful is that you can tell the story of how your dream of being educated in your country took a different turn, and how people were invested in the idea of your education, took decisions behind the scenes to make sure that there's a solution for you and others. We were part of these discussions. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to create continuity for these students that put their trust in the school. Things happen. There was a company called Enron. It collapsed. Going back to your point about injustice and duty, the company collapsed. It was at some point one of the best companies in the world. But the accounting were not necessarily 100%. So if an Enron can collapse, a small business can also collapse. But it's not a reflection on you or anybody else that went to the university. I hope that answers your question and reassures you.
I'm hoping once we end, you can, just take a few minutes to actually speak to Carl. I saw a lot of hands up, and we can actually continue this conversation to like 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
It's been very, very, very informative. But yeah.
There's one question. There were two parts of the question.
Okay.
Which was about overreacting and crying. Do you think that I cry? Okay. The reason why I ask you this question is because crying is one of the mechanisms to release stress. And no one should feel ashamed of expressing their feelings behind closed doors or in public. Managing your emotions is a starting point of becoming the best leader you can be. We are emotional beings. We have to understand these emotions and work with them. We shouldn't suppress them. We should make sure that they become a driving force for us. So if you are sad, express your sadness in the best possible way and in a way that you feel comfortable with. If you're happy, do the same. When you start to suppress your emotions, you're creating internal blockages that don't make you necessarily mentally fit. And mental fitness is a very important part of what you learn at ADU, because the values that you're learning becomes the guardrails of how you act in situation, not react. So when they told me on the 8th of September, I didn't react. Because in my head, I was focusing on the things that I control in that particular moment. And what I control are my emotions. And what I want to do for the people that I'm responsible for, my children. So, do not think of your emotions as a weakness. Think of your emotions as entirely part of yourself. And there's no shame in expressing your emotions, being sad or happy, because that will help you to understand yourself better, and especially when you're in situations where you are shocked and surprised. You would have learned and trained yourself to work with your emotions.